Good day, Brigade. This is Bobby, and today we're going to be covering a topic that I actually have a little bit of background on, at least in terms of actual straight-up education rather than just personal research, and that is society, culture, music, and politics. We're going to see how music is intertwined with them all, and in particular politics and society, reflections of music in how society's thinking has been going throughout the years, particularly within the United States, but we're going to have some international examples too, and how it's influenced music and vice versa. Anyways, before we get on to that, you might be wondering, hey, don't you record episodes every 2 weeks? And last season we did. This season we're going to try something additionally new. I know we do that a lot, but it's a bit of experimentation. What we're going to be trying to do is at least once a month, but please don't hold us to that because we're going to be trying to aim for quality over quantity this season. So there's likely to be a lot fewer episodes, but hopefully they're a lot better than our previous ones. Anyways, let's get on with the show. Alright, to get started here, we're going to state a little bit of the obvious, but it does have a point to it. As many of you likely know, music and culture have a symbiotic relationship. They both influence each other very greatly. Music is shaped by the culture, the values, and beliefs of it, and at the same time, music can help shape this through messages and themes to help redefine or push a culture to another direction, or shift it a little bit. In fact, we can see a modern example of it through the United States, and in particular, well, a lot of modern music, believe it or not. Rock and roll would be one of the earliest examples, back in the 50s, in which there was a bit of a separation, or generation gap, if you will, in the taste and like of various music. A lot of the parents of the 50s were not huge fans of this newfangled rock and roll, whereas a lot of the younger kids were. In fact, it stretched on into the 60s with a different form, going more into acid style, into the 70s where you get the adoptions of like stadium rock, building onto the rock anthems, progressive rock, all sorts of things like that. Going into the 80s where we really hit into the hair rock and, well, get into more modern examples of metal and such. 70s had metal too, but it was still forming out itself then. Black Sabbath would be a very good example, believe it or not. And even in the modern day, rock and even hip-hop now. Hip-hop, rap, R&B, all that. They've largely shaped culture and society have shaped them back. Now, how does that tie into politics? Oh, buddy, let's get started. Music and politics have a very, very close relationship. In fact, if you've seen any political rally of pretty much any election within the Western world, I almost guarantee you, unless it is a violation of their election laws, or campaign laws, I should say, that they have played some song at least some people within their base are familiar with. Most likely a lot of you, because that would be the obvious way to go. The goddamn prime example we can think of is Elected by Alice Cooper. Which is really interesting, because if you actually listen to the words of Elected, pretty much no politician should be using it at all. An example of this, aside from the Elected example, one of our favorite songs by the way, is during the 2008 presidential election, Barack Obama himself used Signed, Sealed, Delivered by Stevie Wonder as his campaign theme. Really good song, by the way. You should listen to it if you haven't. Listen to all of the Stevie Wonder stuff. I guess not all of it, but a lot of it. He's a really good musician. Another way music's been used in politics is in protest. I am sure you know this. Protest songs have been used throughout history to express opposition to a lot of government policies and social injustices. For instance, During the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, songs such as We Shall Overcome and A Change Is Gonna Come became anthems for the movement. During the Vietnam War, musicians like Bob Dylan and Joan Baez wrote songs protesting the war. Masters of War is the biggest example I can think of with Bob Dylan, honestly. If you haven't heard that song, oh my god, you should really listen to it. Even Donovan got involved in it with a little bit. If you don't know who Donovan is, he's a rock troubadour from the 60s. He wrote the song Sunshine Superman, and for our cases here, he wrote the song... Shit, I cannot remember it offhand. But, Universal Soldier, there we go. It'll come back to me. Sorry, that was a little off script. Going back to the Civil Rights Movement a little bit, musicians like Nina Simone and Sam Cooke wrote songs that expressed support for the movement and called for equality. Both are actually very good artists, too. You should listen to them. Just keep in mind, we're just going to throw a blanket, you should listen to them for a lot of these. However, there are at least one or two songs we're going to say, don't listen to. It just isn't worth it. Unless you want to understand the culture and history of the time and try to get a better understanding of it, just know there's going to be some interesting music coming up. Ideology, like I said, has influenced the creation of a lot of new music, usually in response to or against it. Examples like punk rock in the 70s was a response to the political and social climate at the time, and can be seen as a sort of successor to the hippie movement. Though in a very, very roundabout way, keep that in mind. It's not like hippies became punk rockers. Oh my god, no. Punk rockers are not exactly fans of hippies, let's say that now. Similarly, in the African American culture of the United States, hip-hop emerged in the 70s and was influenced by a lot of the social and economic conditions that African American and Latino communities faced in New York City. The genre was also characterized by its focus on these social and political issues, such as poverty, inequality, racial segregation. Well, it wasn't so much racial segregation at that time, but there was still a lot of it going on, even if you didn't see it. Are you familiar with redlining? That was a form of segregation. Really fucked up a lot of African American communities in the 60s and 70s. Finally, music's been used, well, not finally, obviously, but music's also been used to celebrate political victories, instead of just being in the campaign or in protest of. If you want an example of that, we go to our guy, Nelson Mandela. Great man, look up what he believed. A lot of interesting thoughts. Very fascinating person. When he was released from prison in South Africa, a concert was held to celebrate his release and the end of apartheid. Apartheid, a war crime. Well, not a war crime, a crime against humanity, sorry. There's a difference. Is literally an Afrikaans word for apartness. It is horrible. Don't do it. The concert featured performances by musicians such as Tracy Chapman, Peter Gabriel, and our buddy Stevie Wonder. Going back to ideology a little bit, a lot of ideologies used music to bring people closer to them or unite their people under a cause. Music has been used also to further reinforce and promote these ideological beliefs beyond just their supporters and to entice and attract others to the movement. It has been used a lot. For example, during the rise of communism in the early 20th century, let's be honest, late 19th, early 20th century, a song used to promote the idea of communism was the Internationale. In addition to this, there was also a song known as the Song of the United Front. And you'll notice communist music has a very distinct style to it if you listen to these two examples. Seriously, compare the two. And then compare it to a lot of other music at the time. It's got a very interesting, very precise staccato-like sound to it. Kind of suggests a march or call to action sort of feel. Really fascinating how music can be used to influence thoughts and ideas, and even feelings. Similarly, and this is the example we're telling you right now, don't listen to unless you have to study it for some reason, is in Nazi Germany. God damn it, Nazis. Music was used to promote the values of the Nazi Party and to glorify the German people. They had an official anthem known as, and I'm going to butcher this, but you know what? Fuck Nazis. Sorry to the German language, but fuck Nazis. Horst Wessel Lied, which was used to promote Nazi ideology and celebrate the party's victories. They can go fuck themselves. So, let's go down a list of various songs used for politics, used by various political movements, and written by the people, and for what reason they wrote them. This is not by any means a complete list. Oh my god, we do not have the time for that. But we want to kind of give you an idea of how politics and society and music in particular have all kind of interconnected and intertwined, and what's inspired these particular musicians with the things they have. Our first example actually comes from one of our favorite musicians and one of our favorite songs, This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie. He wrote this song in response to Irving Berlin's God Bless America, which, if you know what that is, oh boy. I mean, it's not a bad one. It's God bless America, land that I love, that kind of thing. Well, the reason Guthrie wrote this song was because he felt it was way too patriotic and didn't accurately represent the struggles of working class Americans. For those of you who do not know, Woody Guthrie was very big into the American labor movement. He was very supportive of labor's cause, and he was there. His own guitar was so much against fascism, it literally said, "This machine destroys fascists." I love Woody Guthrie, okay? This Land Is Your Land was basically a celebration of the natural beauty of the United States and promote the idea of shared national identity. This land is your land. We'll do it sometime. Another example, going to the 60s and Bob Dylan, The Times They Are A-Changin'. This song was written during the Civil Rights Movement and expresses support for social change and political reform. The lyrics themselves actually encourage listeners to embrace change and to challenge the status quo. Come gather around people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown. Going more into the hip-hop and rap scene, we're going to Fight the Power by Public Enemy. Also a really good song. My god, there's a lot of good songs on this list, by the way. Listen to them. This song was written in response to racial inequality and police brutality in the United States, both of which occur today. The song's lyrics criticize the government and call for African Americans to unite and fight against oppression. Fight the power. A fun song going back to the 70s and written by, quote, the boss, Bruce Springsteen. I've got mixed feelings on Springsteen. I like a lot of his stuff, but at the same time, there's a lot of his stuff I really don't like. But this is a song we do like. Born in the USA. Springsteen wrote this song during the Vietnam War and expressed his disillusionment with the government and the treatment of veterans. If you don't know, Vietnam War veterans were treated very poorly, not just by the public, but by the government too. In fact, the US government has a very long history of actually treating its veterans poorly. We say support our troops, but once they come home, we don't seem to really care. Now, there have been great strides in improving conditions for veterans after they come home, such as the GI Bill, which actually allowed my mom to go to college. A few other veterans bills I can't think of right offhand, but there have been strides to improve it. However, the conditions of veterans in the United States is still not great, and in the Vietnam War in particular, it was horrific. The song's lyrics were written to criticize the government's handling of the war and its impact on the working class Americans. Hey, working class America comes back! So, in America, you might notice, it's pretty common to write music critical of the government. But it should be noted that while there are a lot of examples in music in the US critical of the US, There are plenty of examples historically and in the modern day praising America. Country is pretty well cornered the market on it, but there are other people who aren't country who do write pro-American music and very patriotic songs. See Kid Rock. Please don't see Kid Rock. He is meh. Again, it's not a criticism against the messages he's saying, though there are a lot of messages he says that you should definitely criticize, especially his homophobia. Asshole. This is the guy who watches eating contests. Anywho, he'd be an example outside of country. One particular non-country, or I guess technically country example, that comes to my mind, and there's a particular reason for this, is God Bless the USA, written in 1984 by Lee Greenwood. It was used by the Reagan campaign initially, and rose back into popularity in the wake of 9/11 and the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Iraq. It was later used by you know who, the Orange Dick Nugget, every time he entered a rally. Fun fact, Lee Greenwood is a supporter of it. Another fun fact, if you like the song but don't want to support that guy, don't worry. Many artists have made a cover of it, such as Beyonce, fun fact, and Dolly Parton. There are quite a few others. I believe the band Jump 5, a Christian group, did one. I don't know how you feel about that. It's up to you. The reason I in particular remember it comes from a time we went to a summer camp for, quote, at-risk youth. Yeah, could you believe I was an at-risk youth? Shh. I'm being facetious, clearly. It was called Camp Tanager, and every morning and every evening when the flag raising and lowering occurred, something we were all made to go to, instead of playing the national anthem, at least as far as I can recall, they might have beforehand, I just do not recall, because, again, this was much more prominent. But, unlike what you might expect, they played this particular song, and this particular version of the song, as the flags were raised and lowered. With the national flag, obviously, being the last flag raised and lower. That is actually proper flag etiquette. Yes, there's a flag etiquette in the United States, U.S. Flag Code. Believe it or not, it is a real thing. And fun fact, putting a flag on the back of your truck is a big no. In fact, you should actually lower your flag every evening unless you have a spotlight on it. Flag facts. A little bit of a tangent beyond that tangent. Even as a child, I found the whole standing and putting your hand on your heart thing for the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, even when I was in school, we had to recite this. By the way, can I sue for being pushed into a contract I didn't fully understand? Because I don't think a small child should be made to make a pledge when they barely understand the concept of domestic politics, much less global politics. Also, I don't think that really counts, so please don't look into it. And weirdly enough, many patriotic songs we had to sing and learn to practice, obviously, like God Bless America. So, let's get a little bit outside of Europe, a little bit. Or at least examples that talk about things outside of the United States. One song that I particularly have gotten to like recently, from listening to it and doing the research, is Ramaya by Avrik Simon. I probably butchered that, but I love the name. This song was written in the 70s during the apartheid era in South Africa. The song's lyrics themselves celebrate African culture and encourage listeners to embrace their heritage. A classic example that you all have probably heard of. Imagine, by John Lennon. Fun fact, John Lennon was a utopian socialist. What's utopian socialism? We hope you can infer, but if not, we will definitely come up with a political concept of the month for that one. Because it's a fun idea. Unrealistic, but fun. The song was written during the Vietnam War and expresses a vision of peace and unity. The song's lyrics themselves criticize the war and promote the idea of a world without borders or divisions. Another fun fact, John Lennon actually turned in his MBE to the Royal Crown back in the 70s. Yes, he had an MBE, and yeah, he returned it in protest. John Lennon was a weird guy. We're not Team McCartney, though. We're Team Harrison. Or Team Ringo, we're not sure. Ringo definitely made the most of it afterwards. George Harrison was kind of just along for the ride, and my God, he had some weird situations going on. The Beatles are a fun case study in general. I've studied a lot on them. But they're not related to this whole idea. Beyond, the song. But even then, they didn't write it, just John Lennon. Moving on! La Bamba by Richie Valens. Really good song, by the way. This song is a traditional Mexican folk song that was adapted and popularized by many musicians, including Richie Valens himself. That's actually where it comes from, is he adapted it himself from the traditional folk song. And many other musicians have done it. The song's lyrics celebrate Mexican culture and encourage listeners to embrace their heritage. It's a good song. Ba-da-la-la-bamba. Richie Valens was also popular in the United States in the 50s. Actually, a lot of Latino culture and music was very popular in the 50s. A lot of people don't know that. And our last example, Redemption Song by Bob Marley. This song was written during the struggle for independence in Zimbabwe and expresses a message of hope and freedom. The song's lyrics themselves encourage listeners to fight for the right and overcome oppression. And, interesting note, if you actually listen to the lyrics closely, do not be afraid of nuclear power. I presume the meaning is do not be afraid of nuclear armaments and being attacked by them. I mean, I wouldn't. Though South Africa was there, and South Africa did like Rhodesia. Rhodesia was the name of Zimbabwe before it was Zimbabwe, and before it was actually controlled by the people of Zimbabwe. Fun fact. And yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of other examples you can think of. You're probably thinking of a few yourself. In fact, more recent examples would include songs by the band Rise Against. They've got a lot of good songs on that. Really just listen to punk rock, hip hop, rock in general. Anything that really started out in the anti-establishment idea. Most anything there, you will find some interesting protest music. If you want to find good pro-patriotic music, well, look into your more traditional sounding music genres and your genres inspired by more traditional ideas. They tend to have more of those ideas and values. Though this is not the case with every single person. For example, Simon and Garfunkel were very, very popular folk musicians together. But you could argue that some of their music and, well, a movie they helped very much with, The Graduate, really did have an interesting view and critique on society at the time. So, there you go. Anyways, we hope you liked this episode. It was a rather fascinating one to study. We'd like to give a special thanks to an AI for helping us do some of the research. Don't worry, we did check. The fun facts, though, we didn't use AI for. That was all us. We didn't write a script with the AI either, so, keep that in mind. We just used it for some assistance. As these things should be used for, but always verify. Anyways, thanks for listening if you made it this far. We're going to be coming back in a month or so. A lot of ideas for episodes. We'll try to narrow it down as quickly as we can and start working on a script immediately. But keep in mind it's probably going to happen sometime in June. We're not sure when, but don't expect it early. Because tomorrow is June, obviously, but no. Anywho, thanks again for listening. Those who wish not to be tread on should mind where they step. Have a pleasant night and a great tomorrow.